6 sessions ago, we started with a question. What can AI not do? We have spent the course developing an answer that is more honest and more useful than a list of safe jobs. We have looked at critical thinking, creativity, ethics, communication, and relational intelligence. Each week has been about a dimension of human capability that matters more, not less, as AI takes on more. This session is different in one important way. We are not just talking about what you bring as an individual. We are talking about the structures that organizations and societies need to build around AI systems so that when things go wrong, and they will, someone is accountable, someone can see what happened, and someone has the authority to act. That is governance. And the subtitle of this week is not an exaggeration. The future is already a governance problem. Session 1. AI Governance Frameworks. Not AI Ethics. Not AI Principles. Frameworks. The distinction matters, and we will get to it very quickly. There are 4 objectives for this session. First, understand the components of a robust AI governance framework. Not just what the components are, but why each one is necessary and what fails when it is absent. Second, apply governance principles to real-world AI failure cases. The case analysis is not hypothetical. These are the kinds of failures that have already occurred in organizations that believed they had adequate governance. Third, develop a position on the appropriate scope of human oversight as AI capability increases. This is not a settled question. I want you to have a defensible answer, not a borrowed one. Fourth, for those working on the capstone brief, leave this session with a clearer approach. The facilitator workshop is your last structured opportunity for feedback before the presentation. I want to start with a provocation before we define anything. A governance framework that exists on paper but fails to shape actual decisions is not governance. It is liability management. Read that again. Liability management means we have a document that says we care about doing this right. And if something goes wrong, we can point to it. Governance means we have structures that actually change the decisions being made before harm occurs. These are not the same thing. Most organizations have the first. Very few have the second. And the difference matters enormously when something goes wrong. Because liability management explains harm after the fact, while governance prevents it. Keep that distinction in mind as we go through this session. AI governance. The structures, habits, and institutional practices that ensure humans remain accountable for what AI systems do on their behalf. 3 words in that definition deserve attention: structures, habits, and institutional practices. Not documents. Not statements. Structures are built into systems. Habits are repeated behaviors. Institutional practices are the things organizations actually do, consistently, whether or not anyone is watching. And then the clarification below the definition, which is the most important part of the slide. Governance is functional when it changes actual decisions. When it provides genuine visibility into AI behavior. And when it ensures someone with authority, not just responsibility, someone with genuine authority and genuine will, can intervene when things go wrong. Let me give you 4 concrete requirements that any functional AI governance framework must meet. Clarity. Who is responsible for each AI system's decisions and outcomes? Not which department. Not which function. Which specific named individual is accountable, under what conditions? And what happens when they leave the organization? Governance that names functions rather than people is governance that dissolves whenever there is restructuring. Visibility. Mechanisms that make AI behavior auditable. If you cannot see what the system did in enough detail to reconstruct a specific decision, you cannot govern it. Visibility is not optional. It is the basic precondition for everything else. Intervention will. This is the hardest one. Organizations often have the capability to intervene when an AI system is causing harm. What they lack is the will. The system appears to be performing well by its defined metrics. Stopping it has a cost. There are internal politics around who owns it. Governance requires building the organizational readiness to act even when the AI looks like it is working. Adaptability. AI systems change. Their capabilities expand. Governance structures designed for what the system can do today may be inadequate for what it can do in 18 months. Governance must be designed to evolve alongside the system. Static policy does not govern dynamic systems. There are 4 governance frameworks that any professional working with AI in an organizational context should know. The EU AI Act. A risk-based classification system. Higher risk means stricter requirements, including conformity assessment before deployment. If you work in or with European organizations, this is binding law. The key concepts are prohibited uses, high-risk categories where human oversight is mandated, and transparency obligations that attach to specific system types. The NIST AI Risk Management Framework. Voluntary, practical, and designed to be discipline agnostic. It operates across 4 functions: govern, map, measure, manage. It is iterative, meaning it applies across the AI lifecycle, not just at deployment. This is the framework most commonly referenced in US organizations and increasingly internationally. Singapore's Model AI Governance Framework. Worth knowing because it is arguably the most practitioner-friendly framework available. Strong emphasis on human oversight, explainability, and internal governance structures. If you are based in Singapore or working with Singapore-domiciled organizations, this is your starting point. Organizational AI policy. This is the one most of you will actually work inside. The question to ask about any organizational AI policy is the one on the slide: is it structural or decorative? Does it change decisions, or does it describe values? That question is the whole session in miniature. Let me make the governance versus liability management distinction concrete. Let's take a look at what decorative governance looks like. A financial services firm had a 6-page AI ethics policy. An AI ethics committee that met quarterly. A published set of AI principles signed by the chief executive. When an AI loan assessment system began producing racially disparate outcomes, the ethics committee had no mechanism to detect it. No escalation path to trigger a review. No authority to suspend the system while an investigation was conducted. The policy described values. It governed nothing. The firm had invested significantly in the appearance of governance. What it had not built was functional governance. The difference was invisible until harm occurred. The lesson. Governance is functional when it changes decisions before harm occurs, not when it explains harm after. Now, let me walk through 3 governance failure cases. Case A. The loan algorithm. An AI loan assessment system produced systematically lower scores for applicants from certain postcodes. The system had been in production for 18 months before an external audit identified the pattern. No internal mechanism had flagged the disparity. The development team had tested for accuracy. They had not tested for differential impact across demographic proxies. The analysis question. What governance mechanism should have caught this? What would have needed to be in place from day one? Pause here if you are watching this alone. Think through your answer before I continue. The failure here was in the visibility requirement. Accuracy testing is not the same as fairness testing. The system was doing what it was designed to do. The design itself encoded a bias that the testing regime was not built to detect. Governance would have required a pre-deployment assessment of differential impact across demographic proxies, and a monitoring mechanism to surface that impact in production, not wait for an external audit 18 months later. Case B. The recommendation engine. A social media platform's content recommendation AI optimized for engagement. Over 2 years, retrospective research linked it to measurable increases in anxiety among teenage users. No checkpoint existed to surface population-level harms from optimization decisions. The system was performing well by its defined metric. The analysis question. What oversight structure might have surfaced this earlier? Who should have been accountable? What would a governance mechanism that catches this look like? Again, pause if you want to think through your answer. The failure here was compound. The optimization target itself was the problem. Engagement maximization as a metric does not surface what that engagement is doing to users at a population level over time. Governance would have required a broader impact assessment framework that went beyond the system's defined performance metric. And it would have required someone with authority to ask, we are optimizing for this, but what else is this doing? That question requires both a mechanism and the will to act on the answer. Neither existed. Case C. The trading system. An autonomous trading system made decisions during a market anomaly that resulted in significant losses. The system was operating within its defined parameters. The parameters had been designed for normal market conditions. The governance documentation covered expected operating scenarios. It did not address what the agent should do when conditions fell outside its training distribution. The analysis question. What does this tell us about parameter-based governance? What is its fundamental limitation? The fundamental limitation is this: parameters define what a system should do in anticipated conditions. They cannot govern behavior in conditions that were not anticipated at design time. This is not a failure of the specific parameters. It is a structural limitation of the entire approach of writing down what the system should do and assuming coverage. What is needed instead is a meta-level governance mechanism. A circuit breaker that pauses the system when conditions fall outside its defined operating envelope, regardless of whether the specific scenario was anticipated. The absence of that mechanism is what allowed the system to continue operating after the conditions that justified its authority had changed. Let me pull the 3 cases together before we go into the discussion questions. Case A failed on visibility. The testing regime could not see what the system was doing to a specific population. Case B failed on optimization target design and the absence of any mechanism to surface second-order harms. Case C failed on adaptability. Governance designed for expected conditions cannot govern unexpected ones. But underneath all 3 there is a common failure. In each case, the system was performing well by the metrics it was given. No internal alarm sounded. No threshold was crossed that triggered a review. The harm was invisible to the governance structure until it was reported from outside. That is the pattern. Governance that is reactive to alarms it has not built cannot detect harms its metrics do not measure. Now the discussion questions. Was the gap in design, in visibility, or in intervention will? The 3 cases give you 3 different answers. Which failure type is hardest to fix? Who was responsible in each case? Could they have known? Did they have the authority to act even if they had known? And the hardest question. What would a governance structure that catches all 3 look like? Not in theory. What would it actually require in a real organization? Based on the 3 cases and the pattern that runs through them, here is what good AI governance actually requires. Structural, not decorative. Built into systems and processes, not added as a policy layer on top. This addresses the liability management problem directly. Proportionate to risk. Not all AI needs the same oversight. A content recommendation system that reaches 100 million users requires different governance than an internal scheduling tool. The oversight should match the stakes. Specific, not vague. Named roles, explicit triggers, defined escalation paths. Not values. Not principles. Specifics. Who does what, when, under what conditions, and what happens next. Auditable. Any AI decision can be traced, reconstructed, and explained. If you cannot replay what the system did and why, you cannot govern it. And you cannot be held accountable for it. Adaptive. Designed to evolve as the AI system's capabilities change. Governance written once and filed is not governance. It is a historical document. Preemptive. This is the most important one. Good governance catches harm before it occurs, not after it is reported. That requires building mechanisms that surface potential harms proactively, not waiting for the external audit. The now/next frame one last time. This time applied to governance itself. Now, in the current era, most organizations operate on principle-based AI governance. Statements of intent, value declarations, ethics committees that meet quarterly. This is appropriate for the current landscape, where AI systems are consequential but still mostly operating within well-defined task boundaries. The governance habits being built now, in courses like this one, will be in high demand precisely because most organizations are still at the liability management stage. Next, as AI agency increases, governance must shift from policy to architecture. Oversight built into systems, not layered on top. This is a fundamentally different discipline. It is closer to constitutional design than policy writing. You are not writing rules for people to follow. You are designing structures that shape what is possible, what is visible, and what is accountable, regardless of whether anyone remembers the policy. The governance skill set that this implies. Knowing how to specify accountability at the system level, how to build in monitoring that surfaces what you did not think to look for, and how to design intervention mechanisms that work even when the system is performing well by its defined metrics. That skill set is one of the most valuable any professional can develop right now. The key takeaway from this session: good governance is not about slowing AI down. It is about ensuring that when things go wrong, and they will, someone is accountable, someone can see what happened, and someone has the authority and the will to act. Hold that. Not slowing AI down. Ensuring accountability, visibility, and the will to act. Session 2 is only for the in-person class. For those viewing online, this concludes the series. I hope you enjoyed the material presented and continue to develop your skills working with AI. I am Ian Lowe and thank you for viewing this series.